Tower of Castle Hate Skull, I am Hella Mark Harley. Yes, indeed, for all those haters who thought I was going to take the week before Thanksgiving off. No, it's not happening. I'm here. I'm doing the damn thing. I'm bringing you another absolute classic of an episode. We were voted once again in another podcast competition, classic episode of November for episode 8. 5 stars, all around. The ratings are just going. We're thinking about adding a new star to the podcast rating system on Apple Podcasts just for us because so many people were writing in saying 5 stars isn't enough. I want to rate it higher. Is there some sort of a star exemption that we could do to give Mark more stars? Because frankly, 5 just feels like not enough. It doesn't convey the level of enthusiasm that I have for this podcast. So that being said, thank you so much. On a serious note, some people actually did tag me in a post that WorldStar put up where it said, like, tag your favorite influencer or, celebrity. I know I'm not a celebrity, but I'll take influencer, I guess. Personality, I guess. It was actually really cool that even one person did it, let alone maybe a few dozen. I tried to respond to everybody because it was like, tag your favorite influencers, see if they respond back. I try to respond to everybody, but if I didn't, I'm sorry. And I'll go comb back through and respond to each of you. That was really cool. Keeps me motivated. It keeps me feeling like I'm on track and on my purpose and doing something right. If even a few people look at that, because there are many personalities on the internet. So the fact that a few of you saw that and thought of me, it was really genuinely heartwarming. So, all jokes aside. Now, let me recap my week in a segment I like to call Sup Fool, where I tell you what's up, fool. Chillin', donk. So, last week, I went to Dallas. Was there for the shooting of Brendan Schaub's special. Really cool experience that I wanted to make sure I was there for. I've been watching him do his set on the road and crush it at a number of venues across the country. It's been a fantastic experience. All the fans that come out for this Thick Boy comedy tour, there's just a lot of enthusiasm. A lot of people have started to recognize me. Obviously, people get to see David Lucas, Chappelle, Justin Elliott. It's a whole experience, and the energy that the fans bring is just incredible, and I wanted to be there on a very special weekend. Brenda did great. My producer here, Casey, he directed the whole damn thing and did an amazing job, and it was just really cool to witness all of that teamwork, everything that goes into nailing something like that. I'm really excited for everyone to see it. So, couple takeaways, because as I evolve as an adult, traveling is one of those things that I love to travel, but I do kind of always get anxious about how it throws me off of my routine, specifically with like working out and eating. Now, I got one part of this equation right. I did the working out part right. I'll get into the eating in a second. So I had a flight delay. A lot of flights have been changing recently at the last minute, not super last minute, but a few hours ahead of time. I knew that my flight was, it wasn't leaving at 2, it was leaving at 5. And so instead of being like, I'm going to just, I hadn't planned on working out that day because it was just kind of, a number of things I had to do, didn't really have time. But then I made the decision, I made that pimp decision, as Cat Williams would say, to go ahead and hit a leg workout before I hopped on a plane. Proud of myself because there may have been times in the past where, I'd like to think I would have done it, but in reality, it's like you get a little free time and you just kind of piss it away, taking a nap or doing something non-productive. So I like to pride myself, and I hope to encourage you to do these same things. But it's just that decision, just like, I know I should, and I'm just going to do it. Does it have to be the hardest workout of all time? No, but you're going to feel better when you're traveling. It's going to help you sleep. It's going to help you feel less anxious on the plane, all these things. So I actually went and worked out, did a leg workout before my flight. And to be efficient, I just did leg press. And I was going to do this entire topic on Mark Harley's Academy of Bro Science, but I'll just dabble on it real quick here, which is you can come in and pick an exercise, a compound movement, and hit it really hard, right? Not necessarily German volume training, which is like 10 sets of 10 at a certain percentage that will allow you to basically get through the entire workout with a short rest period, like a minute in between the sets. So let's say it's like 60% of your max for 10 sets of 10 with a minute rest in between. I'm pulling that out of my ass. It could be something different, but it's the rough idea, and the basic underlying idea from that is like, you don't need a whole lot of novelty and variety to get really good results. If your chest workout or your leg workout or your back workout is going to be a certain number of sets, say 8 to 20, do they have to be all different exercises, like 4 or 5 different exercises to get a good workout? No, not necessarily. Depending on your goals, especially if you're a bodybuilder, ultimately you do want to hit muscles from a different angles, especially a complex group of muscles such as your back or your legs. But if you're pressed for time, right, and you choose something that really works, like, a bent over row or just an incline bench, something like squats or leg press, something where you can push the intensity, what ends up happening if you come in and decide to do like 8 sets, especially with high reps? I was doing 8 sets on leg press, all 20 reps, starting with 4 plates, then 5 plates, then 6 plates, then 7 plates, then back down to 6, and then 5, however that worked out. And then my last, it was all 20 sets, and then I did a set of 50 with 3 plates. What ends up happening is by not moving to each station, it kind of cuts down on your rest because you're in one place. So you kind of up the intensity just as a side effect of being in one location. And you don't waste time like doing that kind of, even if it's not a warm-up set, you kind of like figure out, okay, I moved from flat bench to incline bench. How much weight do I need? That first set might not, be all out because you're still figuring things out. With this, you're kind of locked in. You know what intensity level you need to be at, and you don't have anywhere to run, nowhere to hide. It's just you and the goddamn leg press machine, cranking till you puke. Doing 20 reps on leg press, not fun, but worth it. Got a great workout in, okay? So that was one, and then while in Dallas, I forced myself to hit, find the nearest gym, right? Hit a couple workouts, even if nobody came with me. And I tried to get Chappelle, and I tried to get Brennan to work out, but they didn't want to go. They said they wanted to go, but then when push came to shove, they had other cool stuff to do that I guess I wasn't invited to. So it's whatever, keep that same energy, all right? Next time you want to work out at Zoo Culture. Next time you want me to come up with a workout, okay? Just remember what happened in Dallas, and I was at the LA Fitness all alone. Just like my entire life. Okay, I'm not going to go into that. So, as I said, I got the workout part down. I worked out 3 times while either the day of traveling or while traveling. I felt good about that. The thing I didn't feel so good about, when I'm in Dallas and there's a lot of food around, I ate my ass off. And I just want to talk about some of the things that, I'm somebody with a huge appetite. I stay relatively lean, but I had kind of allowed myself to bulk in this, I was basically eating in a calorie surplus for the past few months. Not super intentionally, but just like I was getting stronger and you just kind of go with it, right? And I knew at some point I'd have to stop because I don't want to be one of these guys that's perma-bulking. And I'd rather be lean than just big. So it's not my, I don't have to be big for any particular size or strength goal. I want to look nice at the end of the day, right? In Dallas, there's food, go to the comedy club, there's food available. There's certain things where if it's available to you, you'll eat it, right? If somebody brings cookies to the green room, have a bunch of those. It's hard to turn down and you're, sitting around. That's always kind of the tough thing. When it's just there, right? When you have it around, that's why I don't tend to bring snack foods into my house, because if it's there, it's calling to you, kind of like the pancakes from last week. The cookies were calling to me, okay? And I'm a gentleman. If you say my name, I will eat you. So this all led to me having acid reflux for the first time in my life. And man, oh man, let me just say, if I've ever made fun of you for having acid reflux in the past, I apologize. I didn't know how much it hurts, okay? If I called you a pussy because you're like, oh, my throat hurts, there's literal acid burning my esophagus, oh. I'm sorry. I just didn't know. You can't know what you don't know. So I woke up, felt that acid in my throat. I mean, it's like really does feel like your throat is on fire. It was extremely uncomfortable. And that was kind of the tipping point of like, wow, I can't eat this much. There are dire consequences to overeating. It just makes you uncomfortable. It makes your face look fat and bloated. I'll look at pictures of myself when I'm overeating and be like, God damn, you can see it in your eyes. I used to notice this when I was doing keto, is that I'd have like a cheat day where I'd eat a bunch of carbs and instantly I would notice like, oh, my face is puffing up, right? When you do something, when you overeat, you eat too many carbs, you do something that your body's not used to ever after it's adjusted to the diet that you're on, it makes you look and feel bad. And it was a reminder to me that ultimately, the fun of overeating is never outweighed by the overall well-being that you feel from having your diet in check. So I kind of made that commitment to myself that I'm going to start reducing my calories more deliberately. I'm going to start intermittent fasting, actually, which is something I'd enjoyed for a couple years and helping really get lean. And I'm even going to go into a video for my Bro Science Academy segment coming up where I'll talk about a video that I watched that kind of changed my mind on fasting. And I just wanted to pass some of that info on to you, even though I barely understand it. When it comes to science, I'm like, I maybe can kind of pass something on. I had to listen to it twice and I still don't get entirely what was going on, but I'll give you my broken English version of what's happening. Okay, just wanted to end on a couple notes here because Thanksgiving is coming up. And one of the reasons I wanted to start intermittent fasting was and kind of monitoring my calories is to go into the holiday season with a head of steam. Because when you don't, right, when you're lax about stuff and you kind of go with the flow during the holidays, guess what? People are cooking, there's leftovers, people are baking for no reason, and your mom's, you go visit your mom, she's like, I made all these cookies and pies and cakes. Won't you eat them? Don't you love me? Mark, why aren't you overeating? Do you not love me as a mom? What did I do to you? No, Mom, I love you. I just don't want to be obese. So unless you go in and have that strong boundary and have that, a mindset of how to skirt these temptations, you're going to get fat. So a couple things that I've done in the past that help me out. Working out the day of Thanksgiving, right? Fasting up until you eat. So you're not eating like a fat breakfast and then also eating a fat dinner. Maybe stopping at one plate. I used to eat like 3 or 4 plates and it would be like a contest with me and my brothers to see who could eat the most food. I'm over it. It's fun. I can eat a lot. I've proved what I need to prove. I'm probably one of the greatest street eaters. How it's like street fighters versus like professional. Like I'm not a professional eater, but I'm a street eater. So I'll out eat anybody on the street. It's just like, do I do it professionally? No, because I couldn't pass a drug test. So no appetizers. That's one thing. You could probably eat, 1,000 calories in appetizers. I know I sure could. Another thing is you could take an appetite suppressant like nicotine gum. That's a simple one. I'm not super into nicotine, but if you have a little bit, it suppresses your appetite. Let's see. Schedule a workout at the next day. Like I talked about last week where I locked in my boy Marty to work out when I was at home. Lock something in. Say, I'm going to go work out. Maybe set up, a run with a friend or something so that you get right back on the train. Because that's always something when you fall off and you start eating unhealthy. It's just a matter of being like, I'm not going to take that lull, that week or that month or the year off of working out because I messed up once, right? So preempt yourself and drink plenty of water and just stop drinking alcohol at some point, right? We don't need to get blackout drunk. Have a few drinks and just say, you know what? I'm going to stop because tomorrow I'm going to feel like shit if I don't. And we don't want to feel like shit. Also, final thing here is I wanted to shout out a man named Corey Philpott from Australia. He is doing an Ironman triathlon, which is just insane to me. Like, you have to train so much for this. I knew a guy who did one and he was training like 6 to 8 hours a day with a full-time job. I don't even know how that's possible, okay? Did he have 30 hours in a day? I don't know. But there's this promo we got here. He is doing an Ironman triathlon with a 100-pound log on his back. At first, I thought he said 45 pounds. Turns out it was 45 kilos. My bad. He's 2.2 times the savage that I thought he was. So he's doing a 100-pound log on his back during the whole Ironman triathlon, which is you run an actual marathon, and then it's like 100 miles of biking, if I'm not mistaken, over 2 miles of swimming, if I'm not mistaken. Any one of those would be a huge task in and of itself, but he's doing them all back to back, all with a 100-pound log on his back. And what is he doing it for? Just to show off? No, he is doing it to raise money for orphans, kids without a home. So I thought that was a really noble cause that he's doing. And we can play this promo. Yeah, there we go. If you go to his page, CREYPHILLPOTT_, we see the pool. We see the log. We see chilling in the pool. It doesn't even look like he's swimming. Are you even training that hard? But I encourage you to check him out. Donate if you can, because this is an impressive feat. And again, any one of those things, the marathon or the swimming or the biking, without a log on your back would be impressive on its own. He's doing it all back to back to back. And that's it for Supful. You know all that's up with me. Okay, so this is our first Saucy or Not follow-up. I did a Saucy or Not last week on a young man named Sam W. Chard. Now, my guess was like it wouldn't shock me if he had done SARMs or steroids, but I said it was still within the realm of possibilities for his age and his frame in 18 months. Like, it looks like he was also going through puberty and just kind of like maximized, his potential in a lot of ways. So I followed up with him. He said he liked the segment. And I said, so you can feel free to tell me, like, if you don't want me to tell anybody what the truth is about what you did or didn't do, I won't say anything, so you can feel free to be honest. And if you want me to share it, I'll also do that. So he went into it. Thought this was a really interesting response and exemplary of some things that I've been talking about in the podcast recently. So here's his answer. Technically, no, I'm not natty, but here's the story. Like 6 months ago, a few of my buddies that I lifted with decided they were going to take SARMs because they thought it would make them look insane and make them look cool. Totally. The classic 16-year-old meathead mindset, indeed. So without doing research, I bought the SARMs and planned on taking them. But then I actually did research, and after taking one pill of 10 milligrams, RAD 140, which is a pretty powerful SARM, I decided it was retarded and I threw the bottle away. Good for you. They all did around a 6-week cycle of 20 milligrams, made tiny strength gains, not noticeable muscle gains, got gyno, and most likely fucked their hormones. Laugh my ass off. Indeed, laugh your ass off. Laugh your tits off. Laugh your new tits off. Congratulations. You took SARMs and got a new pair of boobs. So, in hindsight, I'm very glad that I didn't do the cycle, but technically, I'm not natty. So once he said, like, technically I'm not natty, I thought he was going in a whole different place. Like, if you've taken a pill, yes, I would still consider you natty. But I'm really glad to hear that. It's a really awesome story that first of all, he can be an example of somebody who I would still consider natty, having a physique like that, an 18-month transformation where he really put on some serious muscle and looks phenomenal and did it, having the pressure to do SARMs and even going as far as to buy these SARMs and then back off, right? So I said, dude, that's awesome. Really proud of you for both making that progress naturally, besides the one pill, and also to have the presence of mind and maturity to reverse course when presented with new information. I wish more teenagers had that approach to thinking about SARMs, but just wanted to reiterate that you look absolutely fantastic, and your 18-month transformation will serve as motivation for guys your age everywhere, especially ones who are on the skinnier, lankier side of things. And I said, it's like a case study. One group does this, and a group of similar individuals does something else, and we get to see what happens, right? One guy gets great results. The others take the shit, but don't take lifting as seriously. And he goes into that, actually. He went on to say, the funny thing is that now I'm making more progress than my buddies who did SARMs because I actually learned the value of a good diet and actually putting in the work. So he says, SARMs is like creatine at my high school. That's kind of scary, actually, because everybody was taking creatine back in my day, and people used to think of it as something dangerous, and now we know it's totally not, but that bar has adjusted to where kids really think that SARMs is something that you can just mess around with and it has no consequences. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. But I wanted to touch on a point that he brings up there, which is he learned about diet and how to train, right? Learning how to train is so important, right? If you learning even just the intensity aspect of it, you could do one set, and if it's to failure or if it's the right intensity, you can get more results than somebody who's doing 10 sets at insufficient intensity. If you're at 40% intensity, doing 10 sets really isn't going to do much. So learning how to do that is so important, and you can take almost anything. You can, eat right. You can take whatever pill. If your training is messed up, if it's insufficient because you train like a pussy, frankly, that's one way to put it, you'll never make any progress. And that being said, your diet is another thing too. One of the reasons this kid looked good is because he stayed lean, right? He didn't do a dirty bulk. He was lean to begin with, but like as you put on muscle, one mistake people make is just eating everything in sight, and then you kind of lose some of that value that you had of your physique of being a skinny guy in the first place, because a little bit of fat can cover up your gains. So there's no reason to just add a ton of body fat for no reason if you have physique goals, right? So I love this as a lesson to everybody out there, really, that, that one pill wasn't a magic pill, right? It was a wake-up call for him, and I'm glad he caught himself and said, this is stupid, what am I doing? And now he's outperforming everybody who did take Sarms. So let that be a lesson to you that you can do it naturally if you just learn how to fucking train and stop being lazy. Do some research, okay? All right, we get another banging segment of Hella Chef Harley, where I'm bringing you the absolute most fantastic, delicious, complicated, psych, not complicated. Did I catch you there? You thought I was going to go into some complicated recipe, and turns out there is a very small number of ingredients in the following recipe that I'm about to impart on your brain. Now, did I bring the items in today? No, because you'll know what they are. Tuna and a baked potato. Mark, that sounds gross. It's not. So, this is something I've been eating for most of my life, actually. It's something that my mom used to make in a pinch, and I have started to eat that in adulthood just as one of these really quick, it'll take you less than 5 minutes, which is just the length that it takes in the microwave to cook a baked potato. You cook the baked potato in the microwave, 10 ounces or so. You open 2 cans of albacore tuna. I get them from Costco, so they're like, it's like $1 a can, maybe a little bit more if you buy them in bulk, and it's the highest quality tuna. And you can mix in a few tablespoons of Miracle Whip if you don't want the full fat caloric content of full mayonnaise, but mayonnaise isn't going to kill you. Mix the mayonnaise with the tuna. You can add in, something like onions or celery if you want, but this is just the absolute easiest 5-minute recipe. You mix the tuna with the mayo or the Miracle Whip. You put it into the baked potato after it's been cooked for 5 minutes, and you throw in some, no-calorie sauce, maybe like a Tabasco sauce. Goes a long way. And what you have is a high protein, good amount of volume too, because potatoes are actually pretty filling for the amount of calories that they have. So potatoes, I would consider a relatively high volume food, especially as a carbohydrate. The caloric breakdown of this meal is, let's see, I wrote it down here. Here we go. 658 calories. So not too crazy, right? A normal meal. You could eat a few of those and still be well under 3,000 calories. So for somebody like me, that's, a cutting diet, basically, if I had that for 3 meals. 87 grams of protein. Wow. 57 grams of carbs. Again, fits in with that high protein, moderate carbs, the protein a little bit higher than my carbs, which is what I prefer. And only 8 grams of fat if you use 4 tablespoons of the Miracle Whip, or 2 tablespoons per can. So it's one of these things that you probably are listening to this going, Mark, that sounds disgusting. And I totally get it. Maybe you don't like tuna. Maybe tuna and a plain baked potato sounds gross to you. But just give it a try. And if you don't like it, you can feed it to a cat who also likes potatoes. Okay? But somebody who I have fed it to is Chappelle Lacey. He ate it up, didn't you, Chappelle? I'm talking to you, buddy. I know you're watching this podcast going, when is he going to shout me out about the potato and the tuna? Right now, buddy, okay? You came over to my house. I made it for you. You were skeptical, but you ate it and you liked it. And if you're going to pretend that didn't happen, buddy, we got a problem, okay? We got a real problem on our hands because I'm sick and tired of pretending you didn't come over to my apartment and eat the high-protein meals that I made for you and that you enjoyed them. You're living a lie, my friend. Wake up! Boy, we have a special, this is why we can't have nice gyms today. This video has been floating around and I've been meaning to do it. It's really, really special. This guy, we see him standing in front of a mirror at a commercial gym. He's doing some straight bar curls. Oh shit. He lifts it up, does a couple curls, puts it in his hands, lifts it over his head, and throws it right into the mirror. What possessed you to do that? Doesn't look like your own gym. You're at a commercial gym. He's a big dude too. So even if there was somebody there, I doubt they'd stop and they'd just be like, "Excuse, sir, do you mind cleaning that? Could you not throw the barbell into the mirror like that? Thank you." Mm-hmm. So I'm going to watch it one more time. But he throws it with such intention too. It's so, like he's trying to throw it through the goddamn wall. It's amazing. And I wanted to look at some of the comment section on this video. When you realize you've been working out for years, but you still look the same. No, this is how you finish a set at Planet Fitness. Got to confuse the muscle fibers. When you're listening to music while working out and your favorite part comes on. The mirror had it coming. When the test is too high. Never been this confused. I don't know about you, but this right here is motivation. Some people drop their weights. Over here, though, we smash up the mirrors after heavy sets. Must have been the man bun. I will never stop wondering why. Is it a dare? What is the explanation for this? Did he get bad luck? So I guess after all this, there's no explanation. It's just something random. But guys like this, you're a big dude who looks like he's juiced up, throwing weights at the mirror. You're giving steroid users everywhere a bad name. And this is why we can't have nice gyms. All right, we have another compelling and fascinating and maybe even confusing Mark Harley's Academy of Bro Science today. I was watching a video called Fasting versus Calorie Restriction Study Finds Health Longevity Benefits are different, okay, in fasting versus calorie restriction. Now, this is a channel called High Intensity Health where he sort of digs into the science and the studies and even uses some language that, if I don't necessarily, I might get it on the first time around, maybe I'll have to watch it again, but to regurgitate it and really understand what he's talking about, I'd have to do a little bit more research. But I do have some basic takeaways because now people often, I think there's a tendency to see fasting as sort of gimmicky, like people swear by it, but also like the moment somebody starts selling it to you, like as part of some program or whatever, maybe you're a bit skeptical. And it's like, it kind of seems like a fad diet almost, like fasting's the best thing. And it's a little bit confusing as a layperson going, what's science and what is the gimmick? So I'm always going to be drawn to things that try to tease those two things out and actually look at, for example, one thing that I've always said is, fasting is just going to help you do calorie restriction, right? It's going to help you eat less calories in a day, but maybe that's just it. And there's nothing magical about that. If you took two groups and said, one group eats the same amount of calories as the other, but this one has the more limited window because they're fasting, and this one can eat, throughout the day. But if they both have the same number of calories in a day, would that lead to the same exact result? Turns out in mice, at least, and rats, it doesn't. There were some distinct differences between when you look at rats who could eat, a few different groups, right? You could eat as much as you want all throughout the day. And of course, those rats are going to be the fattest and they're going to live the shortest amount of time. But it's kind of like a standard American diet. We sit and we graze and we don't do much and we can kind of eat as many calories as we want at any time throughout the day. So obviously those are going to be the fat rats. And the other groups of people, the other groups of rats were, one was time restricted eating and calorie restriction. One was just calorie restriction where they would parse the meals out throughout the day. turns out some interesting things happen if you're doing calorie restriction plus the intermittent fasting. So you have a limited time window as short as 2 hours a day where you could eat all of your calories. Insulin sensitivity goes down more. You have a greater fatty acid oxidation. So you're tending to burn more fat as a fuel source as your body converts over to that source of fuel because it hasn't eaten anything recently. So both, there seems to be some enhancement of the effects that some of these things are going to happen naturally, like, a drop in blood sugar. You're going to have, respiratory relaxation that happens when you go to sleep, obviously, but it's going to be enhanced if you have the calorie restriction plus the limited eating window. There was just some general benefits that are kind of in the same direction as calorie restriction, but then if you add intermittent fasting onto it and eat the same calories, I go, oh, it's enhanced, right? And it was enough to make me really think that fasting is more than a gimmick. It's at least a win in the column for the notion that fasting isn't just calorie restriction, that it actually is beneficial to human health and longevity, and is something that I'm going to go back to, right? Because is it the best ever for gaining muscle? No. Is the percentage difference between like eating high protein throughout the day, that's the best for gaining muscle. It's probably a somewhat small percentage difference though than eating that same amount of protein, for example, or calories, but in a shorter window. But I feel like the health benefits, even just anecdotally for me, I know that when I fast, I tend to feel a lot better. And one of the things was, for example, abdominal distension in these rats went down with the intermittent fasting group. I've noticed that too. I'll look at pictures of myself when I'm eating all day and you're just more bloated. Your stomach's more full. Whatever that is, if it's actual food or it's a sort of inflammatory response that your body, has to process. And if you give it some time off of eating, more autophagy will happen. It can just process the food and kind of clear things out better. Whatever it is, I notice a difference. I can look at pictures of myself in my abdomen from when I'm using fasting and from when I'm eating all throughout the day. And I just look different. I look different in my face. I look different in my stomach. And hearing that there's a little bit of science to back this up makes me think, maybe these rats are onto something. Maybe these keto rats have the secret that I've been missing out on. Maybe I should buy these rats program, okay? Maybe these are rat fitness influencers, okay? Maybe one of them is going to start a group of mutant turtles who fight crime. I don't know what's going on with these rats, but they seem really cool. They seem like they're in really good shape. They seem like their abs are pretty ripped. And I think they're going to live pretty long. And who knows what they could do if we give them the right mutagen. All right, I'm proud to give you another Deep Ass Thought segment. This is where I take my deep ass thoughts about deep ass shit and put them deep in your ass. Okay? So, I listen to the Sam Harris podcast, Making Sense, because he's a smart guy who has smart people on, and when I listen to them, it makes me feel smarter. I know it's an illusion, but I'm going to keep doing it because my self-esteem is more important than reality. Okay, so episode number 266, The Limits of Pleasure. He has a guy on named Paul Bloom, and they're talking about suffering. I'm just going to play this audio clip right now into the microphone, and you're not going to be able to do anything about it.
There's actually psychological evidence that looks at the amount of suffering people have had in their life. And it turns out that people who have had very low amounts of suffering tend to have low pain tolerance and low resilience. And in other research, they're less kind. They're less able to help other people. There may be something to be said for the idea that a certain amount of unchosen suffering, builds character, toughens you up. The same studies find that people who report a lot of suffering in their lives also have low pain tolerance and low resilience. There's kind of a sweet spot in the middle.
Okay. So, really interesting idea there, right? And I think it's something that I've noticed anecdotally in life. Like when somebody hasn't been through a lot in their life and they're sort of pampered, or they never had to work a job, or they never played team sports, or never exerted themselves physically, or just, have never been in difficult situations before, whether that's, athletically, emotionally, physically, you do tend to notice things like the low resilience, less kind, right? If somebody's never had a job in their life, and been through difficulty, it's probably more difficult for you to empathize with somebody, who's working in a service position, right? I know I've known people who inherited money, never had to work in their lives, and they would kind of treat servers like shit sometimes. That's just one example. And another example would be if you didn't play team sports, or you've never worked out before, if we work out together on those, you're kind of a little scared to push yourself because your pain tolerance for this, you're more willing to give up, right? You're less tolerant of the pain of lactic acid buildup and going to failure and all these things that if you've experienced a certain amount of that in your life, you embrace that. And it feels good to you, because I know when I work out, part of it it's I feel really good afterwards, but part of it is you do enjoy the exertion, even though it's not a pleasure, but you embrace that. And that's part of what keeps coming you back, is knowing that that's the key to sort of happiness and relaxation, even temporarily afterwards. I'd like this also as an analogy to how we work out, because he also said people who have experienced way high amounts of suffering, if you were, abused to a point where you have post-traumatic stress disorder, you're probably going to be sort of so broken that you're hypersensitive and hypervigilant to these things, and you appear to be, more reactive to certain stimulus because it's so the extreme nature of that trauma or pain that you've endured makes you so reactive to never want to experience that again. And I just thought that was an interesting, we have these two ends of the distribution curve over here, where it's not good to be like this, it's not good to be like that. Kind of reminded me of working out, where you want to hit this sweet spot, right? No working out, no stimulus whatsoever is going to make you weak and frail and not resilient, and no progress whatsoever. The right amount of stimulus in the middle, going to failure, going close to, or pushing your body in a way that isn't going to make it break down, that's the sweet spot that he's referring to, that's going to give you the most progress, the most resilience. It's going to help you build back stronger. And then over here, if you were just to go into the gym and try to do 100 sets of squats, or work out till you puke, or do something that's just crazy that would actually injure your muscles and tendons, well, you're going to be broken the next day. If you break a tendon or a bone, or you have an aneurysm while you're working out, guess what? You're not going to get any stronger. You're just going to be weak and unresilient and sensitive and fragile too. So I thought that was an interesting analogy of what we're always trying to do is give yourself stress and stimulus in the gym, but the right amount. Not too little, not too much, because both those will have bad outcomes, okay? It's the Goldilocks principle, right? Too hot, too cold, just right. But come on, she would have got eaten by the bears, right? Are we being honest here? A little girl walks into a house with bears and eats their food, and there's no repercussions. What are we telling kids? What are we really telling kids with these fairy tales? That there's no repercussions in life? That if you go to a grizzly bear and steal its porridge, that you can just walk away from that fiasco unscathed? I don't think so. Grow up. All right, we are here with another amazing Champion of the Week segment, an interview with the wonderful Brittany Gilman, who is somebody who I met while I was an Uber driver, and she was just one of my standout customers. Now, I'll get into your bio in a little bit, but I just wanted to say the first thing before I knew anything about you, right, when I met you when I was driving you, is you're a very engaging person, right? So, as an Uber driver, if you in a typical day, you have all these different people. Some people will be conversational with you, some won't. But I did make a few friends while I was Ubering, and often it was interesting that the people who came across as sort of more open-minded, because not everybody's going to talk,
right,
to your driver or whatever, but I try to remain open. I'll be like, hey, how's it going? If you want to start a conversation with me, then we can do that, but most people don't. So
right.
You were just very memorable because I forget exactly what we talked about, but I remember being that's a really interesting woman. And then, we followed each other on Instagram, and I got to see more of your life, and it's like, oh yes, of course, like she's intelligent and curious and a good conversationalist, and she's also seems to have a really interesting life as well. Those two things correlate, right? So do you mind telling our wonderful listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do now, and then we can get into like how you got there?
Yeah, sure, no problem. And thanks for the very, very kind intro. You make me feel special. So I am God, I don't even know where to begin. I'm a U.S. soccer intermediary. My main company is called BG Sports Enterprises. So we're an international sports branding agency.
Yeah.
And then that's where my soccer agent comes in. But we also work with NFL, MMA, extreme sports, and companies.
Yeah.
So sports across the board. And then I also have a startup in the same space that I launched last summer, kind of as a... it came from the idea of if I could think of something that would put my existing company out of business, what would it be? Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's called Bpop, and that's in beta, so it's still very young.
And what does that do exactly?
It's basically an exclusive opportunity platform for those within the sports business. So talent management opportunities. Opportunities can be media, marketing, events.
Yeah.
Philanthropy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so that's all very cool. And like, you know, I kind of, when I think of you, I think like you're the sort of boss bitch that like a lot of women were like, I'm a boss bitch, but I see you and it's like, you're always, you know, like you have your own business, like, you know, you work out really hard, you like rip on the snowboard. So as I started finding, like I could see that. And then as I started to find out more about you and even just recently looking up your LinkedIn, like you have a really incredible CV, for lack of a better word, and I realized you were a great person to have on because of your, you know, this is like mainly a fitness podcast, and you're huge. You're not only working in sports alongside all these world-class athletes. You know, you do PR for Dominance MMA and like you know so many guys that I'm a fan of and watch. Like you're working directly with all them, but you're also. Were you a competitive snowboarder from a very young? You were on like the junior national team and stuff like that. Because I was like, I didn't know any of this, and I saw you just like ripping half pipes. I'm like, oh my god, like you're so good at this, you know. And you're like, oh yeah, I haven't been in like a year, you know. Like you're like, I'm rusty. I'm just doing this like backflip on a half pipe. Like don't mind me. So if you could take me back to like the origins of your athletics and your endeavors into snowboarding or whatever else you did.
Yeah. So I was the youngest of three. And come from a very athletic family. And so I was put on skis when I was 2.5.
Wow.
And then started ski racing by the age of 5 amongst a multitude of other sports. And so we were always a very competitive family, although I was never forced to do anything, but I was the youngest of 3, so it was kind of like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And
right, you weren't questioning it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I see my brother and I see my sister and I just kind of, oh, okay, this is how we live life. This is what we do.
Yeah.
And so I went to the Junior Olympics for ski racing when I was 11.
Yeah.
And then decided to rebel and start snowboarding. And I fell in love with the sport and I made a goal at a very young age. I wanted to become a professional snowboarder. And then obviously when you get to high school and you kind of have to choose a sport, I chose snowboarding because it was fun. And then I got sponsored and I started competing on the professional circuit when I was 17. Was on the Junior Olympic team when I was 19. Received a bunch of sponsorships and then did the professional half-pipe circuit for about 5 years.
That's so good. So at what age? Because that's like, I mean, you're like a pro snowboarder, like living the whole life of sponsorships and competitions. And having only recently got into like doing tricks, like the most basic stuff, I'm like, the main thing is like, in order to learn that, you fall a lot, right?
Yeah.
It is extremely painful. So I'm like, you're a badass just for the pain tolerance aspect of like, to learn how to be that good at snowboarding, like you have to fall a lot and risk falling. And I think that's like very indicative of a very tough, resilient mindset in and of itself.
Yeah, you have to learn how to fall.
Yeah.
And you have to face your fear constantly.
Yeah.
And back then, there weren't any airbags or, I mean, nowadays you look at the half pipe and they'll have a big airbag at the end so you can go up on the wall and do a crazy trick, you land on an airbag.
Like, we didn't have that growing up.
That's what I'm saying. We had to learn on ice and hard snow. And so it was like, it was a mind game all the time.
Yeah.
Having to just, okay, I have to do this. And knowing that if I fall, I'm going to hurt myself. So it kind of pushes you to
really
go faster.
Focus,
to focus and be just meticulous in terms of your movement, because half pipe is very technical.
Yes.
And the good ones make it look very easy, but it's not.
No, that's the thing. So when I was just learning how to do like the rail slides or these little moves, I was like getting air and doing 180s for the first time. Like I started to notice, I'm like, if I have any other thought in my head before I go, I'm going to mess up. So like it it's an obvious lesson, but I do think it's something that you're talking about, which is like your focus on the exact movement pattern, that you have to stick in order to land this trick requires a type of mental focus that, it's like do or die, right?
Yeah, it's do or die. One time I had to like jump over a truck. There was if you look at a jump, right, you have the lip and then you have the top and then the landing.
Yeah.
And they had a pickup truck parked on the jump. That's the scariest thing I've ever done.
Right, because you could fuck up and just slam into the side of a truck. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was nuts.
It's insane. And so I wanted to touch on that because I think like there must be a correlation and I can see it, but to me I think it's a broader like lesson of you're facing fears and taking risks and learning how to focus, and that carries over into the business world, I would assume, because you're in every single different thing. I mean, just like approaching people, negotiating. I saw that's one of your specialties, right? It's like it's scary if you don't know how to negotiate. That's a scary thing. So, and also, Doug, you're dealing with fighters all the time. You're dealing with very big, intimidating people, NFL players, all these guys that. I think you have to have a certain like sense of self-confidence, and also just as a business person starting your own business, you're willing to take a risk and act boldly. Yeah. Does that?
I think it's a subconscious thing.
Yeah.
Like my mom always looks at me. She's like, "You're so brave." Like I don't understand how you do these things because I do a lot of international business. I go. I spend part of my year in the UK. And then I travel to countries all the time, Portugal, Spain, Italy, France, and I go alone most of the times. So it's like little me, flying to Lisbon, Portugal, and meeting with like 7 football, soccer. I now have to adjust because I just got back from London. Right? So I'm like, wait, okay, I'm in America. Soccer. And it's just always me. And so I think that I don't necessarily think of it. It's just something that I do. I'm the type of person where, and I guess this does correlate to snowboarding, because if you think of a goal, if you say a trick you're trying to learn, this is my goal, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to achieve that goal, and I'm not going to pay attention to the noise and the things that are going on. And that's kind of how I guess it is in business. It's like, right, I started my company at a very young age. I made a goal. I'm going to do this, and I did it. And it's, I've never thought about that correlation, but now it makes sense.
I'm glad I can give you that insight about yourself. I was just also going to say something that stuck out to me on your LinkedIn page was that you worked as a strength and conditioning coach for, was it Auburn, USC, and is there another one too?
No, those 2 universities. And then I worked, I trained just athletes as their coach.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so how'd you get into that? Well, was it for football specifically, by the way? With
USC was football. Yeah. And then Auburn was men and women's track and fields, diving, women's tennis, and I helped a bit with basketball.
And you at University of Colorado, you studied kinesiology. Yeah. You have this background that would allow you to do that. Yeah. But you feel comfortable going to any, or I guess most major sports and saying this is how I would train you for this. Yeah.
Well, during the time in college was when I was competing on the professional circuit. Yeah. And my goal post snowboarding was to be the first female strength coach in the NFL.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And that's why I studied kinesiology. Yeah. And then after I was done with my senior year, I took 4.5 years to graduate because I missed so much school because I was competing in snowboarding.
It's still pretty impressive, I think a lot of people in your position would take 6. Yeah. Or just never graduate,
Yeah. Well, thank you. So let's see what happened. I moved to Mammoth to snowboard full time, and then I was very burned out, had no money, lived in an A-frame with 3 boy roommates, and this is in the winter, mind you. Yep. You're going to laugh. We lived in an A-frame on, I can't say it. Yeah. Glasscock Lane.
Glasscock Lane.
Yep.
Classic.
Yep. Classic.
Just me and 3 dudes on Glasscock Lane.
That's what I'm saying. And no one paid for heat because we didn't have money.
That's hilarious.
So we kept the thermostat at 60. in a mountain town. It was terrible. I had to take showers at work. I was a personal trainer. It was brutal, so I was not happy.
One of the things I brought up today on the podcast actually was the Sam Harris podcast. He's talking with a guy named Paul Bloom, and they talked about how like people who have had more suffering in their life.
Yeah.
Like I think of this, like there's a happy medium. You don't want too much suffering because then it also has this bad outcome if you're like constantly, experiencing suffering and maybe abused or tormented or whatever. There's like, but people who experience suffering and hardship tend to be kinder and more resilient and more empathic. All these positive qualities sort of emerge, and so it just makes me think of you you haven't had an easy life, right? Like you've done some really cool things, but you've experienced these things where you lived in a mountain town and couldn't pay for heat. So like, a lot of people would say that, a lot of people would be like, I'm out, this is just too cold for me. I mean, that's one of the first things that people break under is like, I'm too cold. I can't deal with this. This is really uncomfortable. But you made it work with 3 dudes. That's another added layer of difficulty. And then so what happened from there?
Well, we have to clarify. I'm very blessed. So I've had a very privileged life, but worked very, very hard.
Yeah,
and that was like a low point.
Yes.
Which is nothing compared to the majority of the world.
Yes, and I don't mean to say like you have to grow up poor, but it's like if your parents could take care of you and you were comfortable, that's also really cool. And I think that like it just sounds like they still pushed you to like strive for excellence and they didn't baby you or shield you from difficult experiences. And I think that is something that shows down the road where you're not afraid to be in discomfort. Right? Because maybe other people would be like, fuck that, 3 dudes and no heat and we live on Glasscock Lane. So from there, what brought you to the strength and conditioning?
Well,
by the way, that was a really cool goal where you're like, I want to be the first woman in the NFL. Like, that's ambitious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always made ridiculous goals that, like, don't make any sense. But, yeah. So at that point, I was depressed because I couldn't snowboard, by the way, because I had these thing called pump bumps, which is a crazy name. It's not a bone spur, but it's basically like if you're a skier or a snowboarder, you know what it is. Yeah. It's you get these weird growths on your heels from the pressure, and I'm a very aggressive rider, and they're very painful. Yeah. So I couldn't train, and I was so excited to live in Mammoth and just snowboard full time because my whole professional career I was basically studying pre-med because that's what kinesiology is. Yeah. And I'm a perfectionist, so of course I had to get good grades and I had to do good in snowboarding. So I was so excited to just focus solely on snowboarding. But then when I was there and I couldn't train and I had no money and we didn't have heat, I slept on an air mattress with a hole in it. So I'd go to bed on the mattress, wake up every morning on the floor. It's like, this sucks. Yeah. So at that point, I was like, right, well, maybe I should take a break from snowboarding and pursue my next goal, which is to be a strength conditioning coach. So I did research and I found USC was #1 in the country at the time. It was under Coach Carroll. And so I dug up an email somewhere, found an email of the head strength conditioning coach at USC, sent him an email, asked if they had any internships or graduate assistantship positions. And he's like, well, the only thing we have is an unpaid internship. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. I'm down. So that was history. So I ended up going to USC. I did an interview with the strength coach. First thing he said to me as I literally walked through the weight room. There was a tiny little office in the corner. He was in the office. He saw me walk in. He looked me up and down, and he said, I hope you're not here to get wifey'd up.
How'd that make you feel?
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
But of course,
I mean, maybe a good, maybe if that's because he doesn't know what your actual ambition is. So a good warning, but I could imagine that, was sort of offensive or... Yeah,
well, oh my God. There was a lot of offensive stuff that happened at USC. But...
Really? I can't imagine.
Yeah. Right? What? But that, to me, was, in retrospect, that was the... I would say that was my initiation. Yeah. That whole year was my initiation into working in male-dominated sports.
Right.
And that was the reality of the world. Right,
because I was going to... One of the themes that I kind of wanted to touch on is, you're in all these male spaces.
Yeah.
And you're a small, petite woman,
I am.
So you have to, you have to go above and beyond to command, respect with, your presence and integrity and just how you do everything. And I was just going to say, going out and like saying, I want to do this really ambitious thing. But then it's in the details of like, I'm going to find the guy's email. I'm going to reach out to him. I'm going to take the unpaid internship. I think that's a great example, of like kind of humbling yourself and not just be like hoping that it's going to magically happen. You went out and took these very specific steps to put yourself in position, and were willing to start at the bottom of something, right? And work your way up from there. So that's really cool. And do you have any like takeaways from working in, as a woman in a male-dominated space? Like, would you have any advice to like other women, or just any takeaways from that of like, because that's kind of like one of these issues these days is like, patriarchy, feminism, these hot button things that I could imagine somebody like complaining about that, but you've kind of gone in and mastered it. Yeah. Right? You don't seem to have an attitude of like, it's unfair because it's all dudes. You're just like, I'm going to go do that, and then I'm going to be the best at doing this, and it won't make a difference at that point.
I think first and foremost, you have to know your worth and your value. And you have to be consistent with the value you provide to others. And also, you have to have thick skin. Excuse me. That was something that I learned the hard way, because I came from Colorado, and I'm this sweet little innocent human that thinks everyone's nice and is going to like me. And how I feel about others, I give people the benefit of the doubt. I think everyone's a good person. And I quickly learned that that's not the case. And that was a hard lesson to learn. And also, it's very difficult as a woman because we have emotions. And not that men don't, but a lot of men don't behave off their emotions. They're not as affected. And I'm not a man. I'm just going off of
no, I agree with what you're saying, and that's an important reality to just acknowledge that, like, these, you're around a bunch of men, and especially like professional athletes, like there's going to be a difference in perhaps how you would naturally react to different situations, but what you can't, necessarily play the woman card, right? And say, oh, that, hurts, when you walk in, you can't be like, that's offensive, right? It just sounds like you were willing to be like, all right, I'm going to take this on the chin, or I'm going to like observe and understand the game and just play it. And yes, I have, perhaps a disadvantage coming here as the only woman or whatever, but you weren't like going to expect other people to change for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And you have to learn how to control your emotions.
Yeah.
Which is very hard to do, and I'm still trying to learn how to do this.
But I think that's an important lesson for like almost anything, is like emotional self-control, I think, is one of the most important things like as an adult to learn. Right. However you learn that. Right. And so how's that going? Have you learned to control your emotions?
No. I'm trying.
Yeah. But it is, as you, and I know you like enough to say you seem to really value kindness and giving people the benefit of the doubt, as you said, but like in business, there's a time where that kind of has to go out the window, and you have to be direct, ruthless, combative, really stick up and stand your ground, as it were.
You have to be a pit bull.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, it's a skill, right? Like anything, communication is a skill. And also being able to engage with people that are emotional. Yeah. And you not.
Right. Yeah, you're dealing with somebody who's upset or having a tantrum or something, and you can't, show any
play
of that.
into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be able to listen to this person and be empathetic with their feelings. Yeah. But then you have to be able to find a solution, or calm them down, or just listen, whatever that situation presents to you. Yeah. And then, not get emotionally dragged in yourself. Yeah. Which is really hard.
Yeah. Also very important.
And not take things personal, which is so difficult to do. And in business, how can you not take things personal? Yeah. But you can't. Yeah. Not in business. So it's learning how to decipher between this is business and this is personal, which I can't do. I'm trying. Anyone that can do that and not care about the people they're working with, like,
but at least you should do that, because some people don't even understand the difference, or that you should be doing that, and so that you're going to always, if you don't, you're going to always succumb to taking things personally. And I think you should at least have a check of going, I know this feels personal, but it really isn't, and maybe you can work yourself out of it from that. So the last thing I wanted to touch on was just because you came in, you're like, oh, my legs are sore. I just did a 3-hour leg workout. You're somebody who's still, like, I always see videos of you posting your workouts. You work out really intense. You have an amazing body. So tell us about the importance of fitness to you in your life as somebody who's very busy, who travels and you know, has a business and all this stuff. Like, many people go like, oh, I'm too busy. Like, people would look at you and be like, oh, she's too busy. You know, you could use that excuse. But it's so hard to find the time. But you do, right? You find the time to stay in shape and stay athletic and be healthy. What does that mean to you?
Well, to me, that's one of the most important things in my life. Yeah. Besides family and obviously my work and friends and stuff, is fitness. Is you have one body for this life, and it's your body's reflection of who you are as a person and how you take care of yourself. And for me, that's my therapy. That's everything. Yeah. I'm still competing, by the way, in snowboarding. I'm competing this season. So awesome. I've been training. Well, no, I train hard all the time. But now I have like a goal. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's something that I know how important it is to me. And I make a priority of it everywhere. Every
Even with all that you have going on.
Oh, yeah. I have to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just make it a part of your day-to-day life, your routine. That's your life. That's your livelihood. Yeah. If you let yourself go, if you don't take care of your body, you're the only person that's going to be negatively affected by that.
Yeah. And do you notice a difference in your mental health?
Oh my gosh, 100%. If I'm feeling down, first thing, if I'm around my family and I'm down or in a grumpy mood, my mom's like, Brittany, go work out. She knows me very well. She's like, eat or work out.
Yeah, so simple, but so true.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
But it's you know, even if it's just walking, go out in nature, disconnect from technology, just do something. Go look at birds, pet the flowers. I mean, I'm bizarre.
Look at birds and pet the flowers. But I think
I'm kidding.
No, I think that's great. Like, it is a combination of just getting outside and moving outside, even if it's just walking. It does tremendous things to your brain, and I'm glad you could answer that. And me not, you know, I agree with you, but this is like a theme of the podcast. It's like, yes, get your ass outside, even if it's just a walk. You're gonna feel much better. It's gonna increase your mental health and make your life better. So we'll end on that. Thank you so much for coming on, and look up Brittany. What's your what page should they follow?
Well, my personal page is probably the most entertaining.
Brittany Gilman.
BG Sport.
BG Sport.
Yeah.
Follow it. Do it. Give the woman some attention, all right? Give her some support. She's out here in a male-dominated industry, and you are still not following her? You're a misogynist, all right? You claim to be a feminist, yet here you are not following BG Sport. And I think it's about time that we stood up to you, you big misogynist bully. Go click the link. Go smash that follow button. And I'll be, again, every week I'm checking up on people. I'm saying, did you follow Brittany yet? You didn't? You're going to get a visit from Mark Harley.
You don't
with
want
an ice
that.
pick. Just kidding. Oh my God, cut that out. Guys, thank you so much for sticking around to the end. Thank you so much for smashing that like button, smashing that subscribe button, smashing that notification bell, leaving a bunch of comments that don't even make any sense, but it helps the algorithm, so you're doing it anyway. And remember, because this is going to be dropping the week of Thanksgiving, what I want you to do is send it to somebody who you know is struggling with obesity during this holiday season. You know, even if they're not, just send it to them and be like, hey man, I know you're kind of struggling with being fat and overeating, so maybe you should listen to this. And they'll be like, what are you talking about? I'm totally fine. And you can be like, are you though? Have you looked in the mirror? Maybe you should think about subscribing to this podcast, because it can really help you get on track, okay? And he's a cool guy. Like, I know, sure, he does duck lips and takes selfies and has Botox and lip injections, but the fact of the matter is, he's trying to help people, okay? You can be a vain narcissist who's 50 years old and trying to act like a teenager, but also help people. That's me, and I'm trying to help you.